The moment that got me wasn't even her voice. It was the glassy silence that followed it. That pause, that vacuum, that exact second where everyone registered that she'd just humiliated the man she called her future husband in front of her entire firm. But let me back up. Friday night, a rooftop bar downtown, complete with Edison bulbs, overpriced flatbreads, and 30-story views of a city that always smelled like old ambition. The kind of place where consultants pretend they're off-duty but still eye each other's watches. Her office had rented it out for the quarterly mixer, and she, ever the rising star, decided to make it her engagement celebration, too. I hadn't asked for that. Wasn't even told. Just got the calendar invite. Skybridge plus once. Rooftop mixer plus celebration bottle with popping corked. I showed up on time. In a blazer she picked out. Tie she said was too serious, but I wore anyway. She made her entrance 15 minutes late, loud as ever, beaming in an off-shoulder dress she'd bought on the company card. Her arm linked with the VP of sales, giggling at something I'd never be told. And when someone asked about me, "Oh, he's harmless," she said. "Writes little reports. Government contractor or something. I forget." Then she pointed across the room with a lazy little wave. "That's him, enjoying the free shrimp." I raised my glass slightly and gave a soft smile. Stayed seated, exactly as planned. But that wasn't the part that stuck with me. The real shift came later, when a junior associate, couldn't have been more than 24, still nervous enough to respect silence, approached me with a ginger ale in hand. "Are you who I think you are?" she asked. I didn't flinch. Same answer I'd given 2 others already. Just here to support her. Still, her eyes lingered longer than they should have. Not at me, but at the pin on my lapel. A brushed steel lapel pin, harmless, to most, but not to someone in compliance. Throughout the night, more eyes found their way to me. Not hers. Mine. The woman in procurement glanced twice. The CFO, who hadn't even RSVP'd, appeared and froze mid-sip when she spotted me. The VP of Ops offered a weak smile when I passed him by the bar, then turned and muttered something into his phone. I didn't listen. I didn't need to. Now, look, before I go further, let me say this. More than 90% of people who hear stories like this never hit subscribe. But if you're here, still reading, still watching this unfold, do it now. It helps our team tell these stories better, louder, and smarter. And trust me, what's coming deserves that kind of support. Anyway, back to the rooftop. She strutted around like she was hosting a TED Talk, laughed a bit too hard, hugged a bit too long, called out former interns like she was royalty bestowing blessings. Didn't notice me, or rather, chose not to, because in her mind, I was safe. Tame. Decorative. The quiet little man with the good credit score who stayed in his lane. Until her manager made a toast. "To big wins," he said, lifting his drink. "To a brilliant quarter, and to brilliant futures, including someone here tonight who just got engaged." She lit up like a chandelier. "Oh, that's me," she chirped, bounding toward the mic like it owed her rent. "Sorry, I'm not usually this extra. But let's be honest, this is the only man alive who could put up with me." Laughter. She turned toward me, hand on her hip. "I mean, he's brilliant in his own way. Quiet. Harmless. Writes reports, or whatever." More laughter. She glanced at her boss. "I'm the real breadwinner in this relationship. Let's be honest." And that was it. The moment. The silence that followed wasn't polite. It was surgical. The kind that slices without blood. I stood up. No one expected it. Not even her. I adjusted my cuff. Walked slowly to the mic, took it from her hand. Our fingers didn't even touch. And I said, "We won't be getting married. I wish you the best." Just like that. Then I walked out. No rage. No shaking. Just doors opening. Shoes clicking. The echo of someone who never raised his voice, because he didn't need to. She stood frozen. People stared. A few turned toward each other in confused murmurs. And behind me, one man muttered, just loud enough to hear, "Wait, that's him." Later in the evening, after the drinks had switched from spritzers to whiskey and the rooftop temperature dipped just enough for the women to pretend they were cold and the men to pretend they were needed, her friend Kelsey handed her the mic. It was a stupid, tacky moment. No one asked for a toast, but she thrived on uninvited spotlights. She tapped the mic like she was testing a grenade, grinning with that smug upward curl she used when she thought she was being charming. "To my future husband, God bless him, he tries." The crowd laughed, more out of reflex than joy. It was the kind of laughter you hear at forced fun, when the boss is watching and your wine hasn't hit yet. She carried on, buoyed by the noise. "Honestly, he's brilliant in his own way, quiet, harmless, a little mysterious, but it's cute. A few more laughs. A louder one from the VP, who hadn't stopped staring at her shoulder all night. Let's just say, I'm the real breadwinner in this relationship. That one landed harder. Too hard. Even the drunkest in turn flinched slightly. I didn't move. I was still standing near the bar, one hand in my pocket, the other adjusting my cuff. A small gesture, barely noticeable. The last piece of armor. She beamed at the attention, basking in her own sarcasm. The laughter slowed, then stopped. People waited for me to respond. Some with smirks. Some with pity. I stepped forward. She looked surprised. Why wouldn't she be? I was supposed to be quiet. Passive. The decorative fiancé with nothing to say. I walked up to her, reached for the mic. Not abruptly, not rudely, just a gentle claim of space. She gave it up, confused. A weak smile on her face, like she thought I was about to make a self-deprecating joke and smooth it all over for her. I didn't. I turned to the crowd. I made eye contact with nobody, and somehow with everyone. Then I looked at her. We won't be getting married, I said. I wish you the best. 5 seconds of silence. 10. Then I turned and walked away. No flourish. No dramatics. Just the honest sound of expensive shoes on cheap rooftop tile and the soft ding of the elevator arriving. I didn't look back. I didn't have to. Behind me, I could hear the shift. A confused murmur from someone near the DJ booth. A quiet gasp from one of her friends. A chair scraped slightly as someone stood. Then, nothing. But not nothing. Not really. It was the kind of stillness that vibrates. The kind that makes your skin itch even when no one's touching you. She stood motionless, still holding her champagne, the mic now dangling from its cord like an afterthought. Her face, caught between a forced laugh and something closer to panic, froze in place. Her boss, a thin man with perfect teeth and a nervous tick in his jaw, whispered something to the woman next to him. The CFO turned to someone from legal and made a motion with his hand. Subtle, nervous, defensive. I was already in the elevator by the time she took a breath. Already gone before the first person whispered, "Wait, who was that guy?" I wasn't a man leaving a party. I was a match walking away from gasoline. He was gone before the first full sentence formed. The elevator doors had closed, swallowing him like the last scene of a film everyone suddenly realized they'd misread. It wasn't the ending they'd expected. Not even close. Confused murmurs filled the rooftop like steam rising off pavement. Was that real? Did they break up just now? That was weird, right? But underneath the superficial chatter, something else was creeping in, something colder. Sharper. Recognition. A junior associate, fresh out of grad school, the kind who memorized names at mixers to climb faster, took out her phone and began typing. Not a text. A search. She squinted at something on the screen, swiped down, then stopped cold. Wait a minute. She turned the screen toward the woman beside her. This memo, this was sent out months ago. Remember? Anonymous audit request. Internal affairs. It mentioned embedded monitoring. The other woman leaned in, brows furrowed. What department? No department. That's the point. External placement. No fixed title. Someone else, an analyst, spoke, softly. That guy? I think he was at the Q4 review in New York. Just sat in the back. Said nothing. Didn't take notes. Another voice joined. You don't think. They didn't finish. Because at that exact moment, her boss, mid-50s, gray temples, permanent Bluetooth earpiece, stepped away from the crowd with his phone already ringing in his ear. He didn't wait for it to connect. He was already talking, voice clipped and urgent. It's him. It has to be him. People noticed. People always notice panic when it's not theirs. She, the center of the celebration just minutes earlier, stood frozen. The mic dangled at her side, the smile long gone. Her hand trembled slightly, just enough to betray the fact that she wasn't confused anymore. She knew something had gone very wrong. She just didn't know what yet. The glass in her other hand slipped. It didn't fall dramatically. No slow motion. It just hit the tile with a flat shatter, quiet, pathetic. Like her illusion, breaking in real time. She blinked at the mess, as if unsure whether she'd dropped it or whether gravity had betrayed her out of spite. All around her, eyes shifted. Glances weren't warm anymore. They weren't celebratory. They were calculating. Watching. The VP who'd laughed hardest now checked his phone compulsively. The senior counsel walked briskly to the bar and whispered something to the bartender, then took a drink without paying. No one even flinched, because something had shifted. That man, her harmless fiancé, wasn't harmless. He wasn't even hers anymore. If he ever had been. And the laughter from earlier? That was starting to feel dangerous. Like a scene from a cautionary tale no one wanted to be part of. People began whispering. Not about her dress or her ring, but about him. Questions surfaced like bubbles in scalding water. Was he ever on the payroll? Did anyone run background on him? Why would he be at multiple events if he didn't work here? The CEO's assistant, previously busy cozying up to the data team, now stood perfectly still, phone pressed to her chest like it might shield her from a bullet. She mouthed something to herself. No one heard it. She, the woman with the mic and the shattered glass, didn't move. Because in the span of 5 minutes, her story had changed genres. This wasn't a party anymore. It was a crime scene, and no one knew yet who the main suspect was. But they were starting to guess. In a modest hotel room across town, nothing fancy, but clean, with a door that latched properly and blackout curtains that actually worked, he sat on the edge of the bed and slipped his encrypted laptop from a nondescript leather case. The room smelled like generic air freshener and cheap ambition. Fitting, really. He didn't bother turning on the main light. The soft blue glow from the screen was enough. He entered a long passphrase, for lines of a poem he'd written himself years ago, deliberately unremarkable, and waited for the vault to open. The folder sat there, waiting. Skybridge Holdings, internal violations. No pretense, no code names. He'd stopped needing those years ago. Inside, categorized video files, filtered voice transcripts, and still images captured from months of embedded surveillance. Documents that detailed undisclosed vendor kickbacks. Expense reports with patterns even the laziest auditor could have spotted if they weren't willfully blind. Transactions routed through a shell entity in Delaware, and from there, well, the Caymans weren't subtle anymore. He double-clicked one file, watched 10 seconds of footage. The VP of sales, same one who was howling with laughter at the rooftop, whispering aggressively to a junior manager. You say one word about that invoice trail, and you'll be flipping burgers in Jersey, got it? Click. Pause. Another file. HR director at a conference call, off-camera voice saying, as long as nobody outside gets wind of this, the audit won't touch it. Click. Pause. He scrolled past their names. Names that had floated over champagne toasts and shrimp platters just an hour earlier. The same names now frantically dialing their legal teams from bathroom stalls and empty conference rooms. He selected the most concise report. For pages. PDF. Labeled, Skybridge Key Violations, Confirmed Patterns. Attached to it, 3 clips. 1 audio snippet. A zip folder of correspondence between vendors and one particular senior executive who apparently thought using a private email account would keep him safe. Cute. He dragged the report onto a secure uploader linked to a private server. One only 2 other people had credentials for. One of them had retired. The other lived in a compound in Virginia and hadn't smiled in 15 years. The file sent. No fanfare. No alert. Just a small green check mark. Mission complete. He closed the laptop gently, like tucking in a sleeping child. There was no rush now. The work was done. No one to impress. No one to confess to. He stood, rolled his shoulders, and poured a glass of water from the pitcher on the desk. The air outside was heavy, storm maybe, but here it was still, measured. The thing about investigations is they never start when you think they do. They start months earlier, in whispers and side glances, in someone asking too many questions at a quarterly meeting or noticing a signature that didn't match. They start when people think no one is watching. And they end in hotel rooms like this. Quiet. Unapplauded. Unstoppable. He checked his phone. A single notification. Message received. The only reply. Under review. Confirmed match. Stand by. He didn't smile. Didn't need to. While they were busy watching him eat shrimp, he had been watching everything. The video wasn't meant to break anything. It was just supposed to be petty content, fodder for group chats and passive-aggressive Slack threads. Some low-level project manager named Drew had caught the moment on his phone, snickering as he hit record, just in time to capture the tail end of her toast. You could see her, radiant, tipsy, smug, as she chirped, I'm the real breadwinner in this relationship. You could also see him, motionless, unimpressed, before he calmly walked up and said, we won't be getting married. I wish you the best. It was perfect drama. Drew uploaded it to a private Instagram story and captioned it, this rooftop mixer just went full Netflix. By morning, someone had screen recorded it. Then someone else reposted it to an anonymous LinkedIn meme page that thrived on corporate humiliation. And then, well, then it detonated. What made the video go viral wasn't the breakup itself. It wasn't even her face, frozen in that dumbfounded mid-laugh pose like someone had paused a sitcom in the worst frame. It was the audio. Because right after the laughter died, and just before the man walked off camera, A voice, slightly muffled, clearly off to the side, said something that made everyone who understood it go pale. God, I hope he didn't catch the Cayman account. 6 words. 6 bullets. That voice belonged to one of the firm's senior VPs. You could see just the edge of his profile in the background, balding, red-faced, glass in hand, turning slightly as he muttered it to someone off camera. That sentence turned the clip from office drama into a legal torpedo. By 11 a.m., the video had hit private Discord servers filled with compliance officers and risk management consultants. By 2 p.m., it had reached the inbox of someone in the SEC's Atlanta field office. By 5 p.m., it was being analyzed frame by frame by a team inside Skybridge's own crisis comms department, who, by the way, didn't even know there was a Cayman account until that moment. Phones started ringing in locked offices. Lawyers started digging for NDAs. That night, the entire Skybridge PR calendar was cleared. Every scheduled post wiped. Every travel plan halted. What made it worse was how normal the video looked at first. People were laughing, holding drinks, music playing. Someone was making a dumb comment about NFTs in the background. But once that voice dropped the word Cayman, the tone shifted entirely. Suddenly, every person in the video was a suspect. Every bystander a potential leak. And him, the man with the calm voice and measured walk, he was no longer just a man. He was the man. The one whose face was now frozen in the collective consciousness of every executive who'd ever fudged a budget line or signed off on something they shouldn't have. The worst part? It wasn't even him who posted it. He didn't leak anything. They leaked themselves. And now, every executive who'd toasted that night was awake, sweating through sheets, triple-checking VPN logs, and texting their lawyers things like, hypothetically speaking. Because there's nothing quite like the fear that comes when you realize your secrets didn't just get caught. They got filmed, captioned, and shared. And the man who exposed them never raised his voice. He didn't need to. Their own did the job. At exactly 3:12 a.m., the CEO of Skybridge Holdings, Gerald Langston, a man who once bragged he hadn't taken a sick day since 1998, sat in his bathrobe, eyes bloodshot, phone pressed to his ear with such force it left a mark. Pause all transactions, he snapped. Freeze external logins. Halt bonus transfers. Now. He didn't wait for confirmation. He hung up mid-reply, threw the phone onto his marble nightstand, and opened his laptop. His fingers trembled as he typed his master password wrong, twice. When he finally got in, the internal thread had already ballooned to 46 emails, 3 flagged as urgent. The viral video, that video, had been posted on 2 internal Slack channels, and someone from the European office had casually asked, "Wait, is this real? That guy's name is in our compliance folder." And just like that, containment was dead. By 3:31 a.m., legal's internal memo went out. Initiate crisis protocol. By 3:37, the CTO was on a private call, redirecting server activity logs and rerouting access for Tier 2 admins. At 3:45, the company-wide email went live. Subject: internal review, immediate action required. Effective immediately, Skybridge Holdings has engaged a third-party compliance firm to conduct a full internal review. Do not delete, alter, or conceal any files, messages, or data from the past 18 months. Communications regarding the whistleblower should be directed exclusively to legal. Further instructions to follow. No name. No mention of the party. No reference to the video. Just the word that dropped like a steel trap onto every inbox. Whistleblower. Across time zones, employees groggily reached for their phones. Confusion. Alarm. Panic. But not her. She hadn't slept. She'd spent the past 6 hours refreshing social media feeds, group chats, internal Slack threads, and her email, watching as the panic spread like ink in water. When the subject line hit her screen, she didn't gasp, didn't cry. She just sat there, still in the dress from the night before, makeup smudged, hair stiff with spray. She blinked at the screen once, twice, then again. Her hand hovered over the mouse, unwilling to scroll. One line in the message hit her harder than the rest. Any communication with the whistleblower is to be directed to legal, not the subject of the video, not the man formerly engaged. Whistleblower. The shift was seismic. He hadn't just left her. He had buried her. She whispered the word out loud, as if saying it might prove it was a mistake. Whistleblower. It wasn't just the title. It was what it meant. He had a file. He had evidence. He had names. He had them. And he had never been harmless. That had been the mask. The one she paraded around proudly, laughed about at dinners, used as a prop in her rise up the ladder. The quiet fiancé who never said much and let her shine. But he had been watching, listening, documenting. And now? Now the company was rallying around the fire he'd lit, because they didn't know how much gasoline had been spilled. She checked her phone again. Still nothing from him. Not a single message. No closure. No reaction. No anger. Just silence. And silence, she was starting to understand, was his most terrifying weapon. She wasn't stupid. Just late. The moment that all-staff email went out, she knew she had to get ahead of it. Or at least try to. Not for love. Not for dignity. Those were already circling the drain. But for survival. She started with a text. One line. Can we please talk? Just the two of us. No response. She sent another. A longer one. Apologetic. Rambling. Confused, but polished just enough to sound composed. Still nothing. By 9 a.m., she was calling. Straight to voicemail. She emailed. 3 separate accounts. No bouncebacks. No read receipts either. At 10:42 a.m., she left the office under the guise of needing air and took a rideshare to the hotel she hoped he was still at, the one she vaguely remembered him mentioning weeks earlier, the one he'd said had reliable coffee. She arrived flustered, hair tied back, oversized coat hiding last night's dress. Walked right up to the front desk and asked if a guest under his name was checked in. The clerk didn't even blink, just handed her a folded note and stepped back. Inside, just one line. All statements should go through counsel. No signature. No room number. No warmth. Just a flat wall of legal fireproofing. She stood there a full 30 seconds before realizing the lobby had gone quiet around her. Everyone had heard that. She left without a word, the note clutched like a court summons. Back at the office, her badge still worked, for now. But the atmosphere had shifted completely. People who used to say hi in the hallways suddenly found their phones very interesting. Others were eerily polite, like someone being kind to a patient with a terminal diagnosis. By noon, she was called upstairs. Her boss's office had the blinds drawn, which was rare. He sat behind the desk with his jacket off, sleeves rolled up, coffee steaming next to a legal pad. He didn't offer her a seat. She sat anyway. He didn't look angry. That would have been easier. He looked tired, disappointed, calculating. "Did you know who he was?" he asked flatly. I didn't," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "He said he was in consulting. Contract stuff. I thought." He cut her off with a small, exhausted sigh. "Then why?" he asked slowly. "Did you mock him in front of 50 employees?" She blinked. "I didn't mean to. You said you were the breadwinner. You said he was harmless. You made him a joke." "I didn't know who he was," she said again, weaker this time. "You were engaged," he said. "And you didn't know." There was silence. He leaned back, folded his arms. "We're doing damage control. Legal is already looped in. Compliance is hemorrhaging resources trying to figure out what he accessed. And your name is now attached to the most humiliating leak this company's had in years." She opened her mouth, but he held up a hand. "Don't. Just don't." He stood. The meeting was over. "Take the rest of the week," he said. "We'll be in touch. Not we'll talk. Not HR will follow up. Just that vague, corporate threat that always precedes something final." She walked out like a ghost in heels. Her phone buzzed with incoming messages, friends asking if she was okay, if the rumors were true, if he had really done all that. She didn't answer any of them, because she already knew the answer. And now, so did everyone else. By Tuesday morning, a decision was made behind closed doors on the 32nd floor. They needed to know exactly who he was. No more assumptions. No more whispers. Someone in legal, maybe as a bluff, maybe out of real fear, suggested hiring an external investigative firm. Discreet. Fast. Expensive. The firm, one of those nameless black box outfits with ex-NSA staff and no public phone number, accepted the case. They took the name she gave them. She'd written it down on a yellow post-it note, her handwriting suddenly looking juvenile, almost embarrassed to share the page with his. They promised results in 48 hours. It took them 12. The report arrived early Wednesday. It didn't come in a folder. It came on a secure drive with a non-disclosure form stapled to it, hand-delivered by a man who didn't remove his sunglasses in the lobby. When her boss read it, he didn't call her in this time. He just sent the file to legal with one sentence. "We underestimated him. Badly." The report was short, sparse on detail, but devastating in implication. Name, redacted. Status, former federal contractor. Current clearance level, classified. Assignment history, multiple sealed projects spanning financial oversight, internal compliance, and regulatory integrity at major firms. Current role, embedded compliance officer, independent contract, verified by regulatory agency X. Purpose: internal audit of high-risk financial behavior. See Section 2A. Offshore concerns, vendor kickbacks, insider dealings. There were no social media links, no education history, no previous employment contacts, no LinkedIn, no pictures, just one final note in bold. Subject: operated under independent compliance authorization. All relationship activity falls under presumed operational cover. In other words, he was never her fiancé. The man she introduced at parties, joked about in meetings, posed beside in engagement photos taken on her company-allotted vacation days. That man didn't exist the way she thought he did. He hadn't been hiding from her. She just never looked. The ring he gave her? Purchased through a holding account. The report linked to a blind trust used in prior investigations. The apartment lease she made him sign? Turned out he'd paid the entire year's rent up front in cash through a property management firm owned by a shell company, one that had quietly changed names 2 days after they moved in. Every detail she once took for granted, the mysterious consulting trips, the way he never brought up coworkers, how he always asked about her job but never talked about his. All of it snapped into focus like a cruel joke she'd been the punchline of for a year. She wasn't part of the mission. She was the mission. She hadn't been collateral damage. She was the access point. Her calendar, her guest passes, her account logins, the gossip she repeated at home about who was hoarding bonuses and who knew too much, the forwarded late-night presentations, the screenshots she once bragged about sending him, just for feedback. She had handed him a corporate roadmap. All he had to do was keep smiling and nodding. And she had mocked him in public for being harmless. Now, the firm was on high alert. Legal went quiet. Her badge access was limited to 1 floor. And in the cafeteria, she heard it. 2 interns whispering, too young and too naive to lower their voices. Wait, was she sleeping with the guy auditing us? No way. That's got to be illegal or something, right? She didn't say anything. Because the truth? It wasn't illegal. It was just smart. On his part. By Monday morning, the building no longer felt like a workplace. It felt like a bunker under siege. The elevators were sluggish, hallways uncomfortably quiet. Executive assistants had been instructed not to schedule any new meetings. PR issued a brief, bloodless statement to the press. Skybridge Holdings is cooperating fully with all inquiries. But internally, no one was cooperating with anyone. The subpoenas landed like sniper shots, precise, devastating, and unannounced. Delivered by grim-faced agents in cheap suits who didn't smile, didn't chit-chat, didn't need to. By noon, 3 senior partners had retained private counsel. A 4th tried to board a flight to Zurich that morning and was pulled aside by TSA. The rest stayed glued to their offices, clutching legal pads they didn't understand, whispering to assistants about wiping backups that were already archived 6 times over. And then came the leaks. Internal chat logs, once full of emojis and off-color jokes, started circulating anonymously. Names were named. Dates were tied to vendor dinners and consulting bonuses that didn't match any known transactions. In one of the threads, her name came up twice. The first was casual, an offhand comment from a senior analyst noting that she'd forwarded the June report early again to her +1. A +1 who, by then, they all knew wasn't a plus anything. The second reference wasn't casual at all. It was a flagged expense report, dated 3 months prior. A dinner sheet submitted for reimbursement. 2 guests. No description. A receipt totaling $914.77 from a restaurant in D.C., now marked as irregular. The card used? Linked to a departmental budget currently under federal audit. She sat in a conference room while legal questioned her for over an hour. Who was present at the dinner? Why was there no itemized breakdown? Was it related to vendor onboarding? Had she ever shared internal documents with her fiancé? She denied everything, claimed memory gaps, said it was a personal dinner, said the guest must have been a friend. I didn't know who he was, she repeated. Again and again. But in the eyes of corporate warfare, innocence is an endangered species. And guilt by proximity? That's a default setting. It didn't matter whether she knew. What mattered was that she'd brought the grenade to the party and pulled the pin herself. By Tuesday, the board held a closed-door vote. On Wednesday, her resignation was requested, a polite euphemism wrapped in a legal threat. She had until 5 p.m. to clear her things. No press release, no farewell email, no handshake, just silence. Her desk was already boxed when she arrived. The intern for marketing looked at her like she was radioactive. Even HR didn't make eye contact. The security guard who once flirted with her didn't say a word as he signed her out and took her badge. She stood in the lobby with a single cardboard box in her arms, wondering how a woman with a LinkedIn banner that said Disrupt, Elevate, Inspire had ended up here. The firm didn't mention her name in the public statement that followed, but she was in the story. She just wasn't of it anymore. And as she walked out of the building that had once applauded her every promotion, the only thing she could whisper, to herself, to no one, was the same line she'd used since the moment he left her holding that mic. I didn't know who he was. But now it didn't matter. No one cared anymore. Exactly 7 days after the rooftop party, every employee at Skybridge Holdings received a calendar invite they didn't dare decline. Subject, executive briefing, attendance mandatory. Location, internal secure portal. Time, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Length, 18 minutes. No details, no context, just a virtual room, a countdown, and one line from the CEO's assistant. This message will not be repeated. At 8:59, over 300 employees logged in, some at their desks, some from airports, some still in pajamas, clutching coffee like a shield. By 9:01, the screen went black. Then, Gerald Langston appeared. Not in a suit, not at his desk, in a blank room with blank walls. No logos, no flags, just him, paler, smaller, slightly sunken around the eyes. He didn't waste time. There's been an internal investigation, he said, voice clipped. It uncovered serious breaches of compliance. We are cooperating fully with federal authorities. Several resignations have been accepted. Further action is ongoing. A pause. Then the pivot. One individual, who was embedded within this organization under legal and independent authority, acted alone to document these violations. This was not a vendetta. It was not personal. It was a correction. He leaned forward, just enough to break the fourth wall. Most of you were unaware. Some of you weren't. If you're still confused about what this is, allow me to show you. The video began without intro. No title card. No music. No context. Just footage, shaky, from a phone, of the rooftop party. Her voice first. To my future husband, God bless him, he tries. Laughter. Honestly, he's brilliant in his own way, quiet, harmless, a little mysterious, but it's cute. More laughter. Let's just say, I'm the real breadwinner in this relationship. The laughter peaked, then dropped, and there he was, walking forward, calm, focused. He took the mic. We won't be getting married, he said. I wish you the best. He turned, walked out. You could hear someone gasp in the background. Then, audio enhancement kicked in. A single line, off to the side. The VP's voice. God, I hope he didn't catch the Cayman account. Silence. And then the final image. Not of him, but of her. Mid-laugh. Head tilted. Glass in hand. Smug. Unaware. The camera slowly zoomed in, her face pixelating ever so slightly as it magnified. Not frozen like a photograph, but caught. That single frame, cocky, careless, became the new icon of collapse. Then the screen went dark. Langston's voice returned. The engagement ended quietly. But this will not. And with that, the feed ended. No Q&A. No closing remarks. Just black. Inside the building, no one spoke. Meetings were canceled. Offices went quiet. Slack channels turned into graveyards. The empire hadn't just cracked. It had rotted from the inside and been exposed by the man no one thought twice about. She never showed her face again. Not in the office. Not in the industry. The last time anyone saw her name was in a forwarded memo. All further inquiries regarding Ms. Redacted are to be directed to outside counsel. But the clip? That lived forever. In corporate trainings. In compliance seminars. In whispered stories about what happens when you underestimate the quiet ones. His revenge wasn't rage. It was a mirror. And she handed it to him. With a mic. On camera. While smiling.